My name is Larry Speck, and this class is Architecture and Society. I've been teaching this class forever. I love teaching this class. But this is going to be a little bit different version of it in that we're going to have about 45 short talks in this version. And the very beginning talk here is really going to address the question of why would you want to be taking a class like this? Why would I want to be teaching a class like this? So let's take a look at that. So I introduced myself, but the other important element of the class is all of you in the class. And generally, there are three different kinds of students who are in Architecture and Society. There are, of course, architecture majors, and those are a very, very important part of the class. People take it as a freshman, usually their first semester in architecture school. We're actually sitting here in the courtyard of the School of Architecture. You'll be spending many happy hours here in studios and in other classes in the School of Architecture. For all of you, oh my God, I can't imagine a more satisfying and challenging and interesting discipline as architecture. From my own point of view, absolutely, it's been an amazing discipline to be a part of for my own very long career. So for you, this hopefully will be exciting, kind of broad introduction to this field you've selected as your major. A second large number of people in the class are people who are thinking, well, you know, maybe I'm interested in studying architecture as a major, but I don't know whether this is the right thing for me or not. And this is an excellent class for helping you focus on that, because it'll be a very good exposure to what this discipline is, all ranges of this discipline. And I think it'll help you make that kind of career decision. But actually, the bulk of the class, most of you, are business majors or economics majors or biology majors or engineering or communications, or we have pretty much every discipline across the campus who takes this class. And many of you are taking as a VAPA class, a visual and performing arts class. And you decided instead of taking film or art history or music or something like that, you would take an architecture class. And damn, I think that was a good decision. I think you'll find this is a very, very fascinating topic, and I certainly will be busting my ass all semester trying to help you understand what an amazing and important discipline this is for you. So today we're really going to focus on why you would want to take this class, why I would want to teach this class. What is it we're trying to do here? What are our goals in terms of what we're learning about architecture? And I'd say there are three things that we're going to focus on today. The first is this class should increase your awareness of the discipline of architecture. It should familiarize you with the discipline of architecture. And unfortunately, in 21st century American culture, we are abysmally ignorant about architecture. We don't know whatever about architecture. We just don't pay any attention. Our educational system is not very rich in terms of what it offers in terms of architecture. It's not a focus of media or any kind of popular culture education. Most people, honestly, they just don't know much about architecture. Now, a symptom of that might be, I was in an airport a couple of years ago, and TV's on in the hold room, And there's a quiz show, I don't even know the name of it, but it's one of these quiz shows where they pair a smart-ass celebrity kind of person with a nerd who just seems to know everything about everything, a real trivia expert. And they team them and they pit them against each other and they ask these difficult questions, and the nerd always seems to know the answer, and the smart-ass color person makes some cute comment. So I kind of have a consciousness of this happening in the background of that whole room. I'm not really paying attention, but then I hear this question, and they ask, name as many famous architects as you can in the next 20 seconds. I think, wow, cool. They're talking about architecture in popular culture here. So I'm glued to the TV screen then, and the question was, name as many famous architects as you can. So this nerd who has seemed to know everything about everything, blurts out immediately, Frank Lloyd Wright. Tick, 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 tick. Embarrassingly long silence. He has no idea of any other architect's name except Frank Lloyd Wright. And it really was weird. These people, they know everything about everything. If they'd asked, name as many famous heart surgeons, that guy would have come up with 10 names. If they'd said, name as many NFL football quarterbacks, he'd have given a whole big long list. Even if they'd said, name as many opera singers as you can, he'd have had 6 or 8. But he can only name one architect, Frank Lloyd Wright. And I was just like, thank God for Frankie. I mean, he's the one architect most people know. And that really is just kind of symptomatic of how little people know in American culture about architecture. Now, honestly, that's not true in other contemporary cultures. In Europe, they have much more education in architecture, and they have much more in their popular culture about architecture. I was on a boat going from Helsinki to St. Petersburg a while back, and it was one of these boats where we were on it for several days, and we have all the meals at the same table with the same people. And the people at our table were all Finnish, and they only spoke Finnish, and we only spoke English. So there wasn't much conversation. But about the second or third meal, I realized there's a teenage kid in that family who's understanding our conversation because he's smiling at the right time, and clearly he's eavesdropping. So I start a conversation with him, and he's got pretty good English. And he asks me, what do you do? And I'm an architect. And so he and I start having this conversation about architecture. The kid's 16 years old. He knows so much about architecture. He knows many architects' work. He has his favorite architects, Finnish architects that he really likes, world-renowned architects that he really likes. He's really, really attuned to architecture. And I said, dude, how did you get to know all of this? And he said, well, we study it in school. Doesn't everybody know about architecture? I said, most 16-year-old kids in America, no, they don't know anything about architecture. So clearly we're out of sync with a lot of the rest of civilized culture in the world. So it's just symptomatic of how little we know about architecture, how abysmally ignorant we are. So this class should familiarize you with the discipline of architecture. And we're going to really do that in several different ways. One is we're going to roll back to all the experience you've already had in architecture. The interesting thing is you've been living in and being surrounded by architecture all your life. So you've got 18, 19, 20, 30, 50, however many years of experience in architecture, and we're going to try to reconnect you with that to help familiarize you with the discipline of architecture. And I'll be asking you to think back to your high school, think back to your grandma's house, think back to a trip you took, and to pull up the knowledge you already do have about architecture, but maybe haven't thought about. A second thing is we're going to, in this class, really emphasize walking out of a lecture or a talk and immediately looking for, how can I apply that to the world around me? To just familiarize you and make you think about everyday buildings that you see in your life, and to make those a part of learning about architecture. And then the third thing is we're going to look at some amazing, incredible, exotic kinds of architecture that maybe you haven't thought about or haven't seen. And we're going to have to sort of make that a part of expanding your sense of what is the discipline of architecture as well. Now, I totally believe that architecture is extremely useful to all of you. When you buy a house, if you know about architecture, you can be so much better at buying that house. When you sit in your neighborhood association and you volunteer your opinion, it can be a so much better opinion if you know something about architecture. Just living your life in so many ways, because it is surrounded by and immersed in architecture, it's incredible if you actually can be doing that eyes wide open and understanding the world around you. And then sometimes it can be phenomenally useful. Let me give you an example of this. I was at Whole Foods. I live a block from the mothership of Whole Foods downtown, and was there by the bread counter a while back. And this tall, bald-headed guy comes up to me, and he says, you're Larry Speck, aren't you? I said, yeah. He said, you know, I took your class in 1987. And I just wanted to tell you, I totally loved that class. I was an English major. I was a senior. If I had not been a senior, I'd have totally switched my major. I was sucked in by architecture. I loved it. It was great. And, you know, but I was a senior. I was out of money. I needed to get out and get a job. So I couldn't actually get a job in anything having to do with English, but I'd always been good at computers, so I got a job doing IT work at a big corporation. So I'm the guy who loads the software up in your machine and troubleshoots, that kind of thing. So I do that a couple of years. It's fine. And then I hear that my company is going to build a new building. And they're going to have this committee of employees that is the kind of client team for this new building. And I think, holy moly, this is my chance. This is my chance to use all that stuff I learned in Speck's class and to really reconnect with it and enjoy that. So he goes to his supervisor and he says, you know, we have got to get somebody on this building committee that is from M.I.T, because otherwise they're going to put all the electrical closets in the wrong place. They have all the Wi-Fi hotspots in the wrong place, and it'll make our life hell forever. So we need someone on that committee. And his boss says, yeah, I get your point. Yeah, it's probably right. Would you like to do it? And he said, well, yeah, I think I could do that. So he gets on this committee and he's working with the architect, and you know, he's interested in the electrical closets and the Wi-Fi hotspots, but he's really much more interested in how can we design this new environment for our company so that it really encourages collaboration between us, and it really encourages a sense of community and a sense of all of us being in this together rather than segmenting us and making departments isolated from each other. How can the building help us do that? And he was interested in how can we make a building that really expresses our brand, that any visitor that comes to the building, they understand who we are, what we're about, and what our values are as a company. The architecture can be great at that, and I want to make sure that's done well. So he's talking with the architect and with the rest of the committee about this. He had a great time. He loved it. He and the architect just totally bonded. And they got a great building out of it. Everybody moved in. They were super happy with the new building. And so then he goes back to just doing his IT job. Then, I don't know, a few months after they've been in the building, one of the big wig vice presidents comes down to his office and says, you know, I've been hearing these things about your performance in that building committee. And people said that you're really attuned to how we improve our collaboration and our sense of community in this firm. And they also were really impressed at your attentiveness to our brand and how we could communicate that in the building. And you know, people have been commenting that you seem to have a lot of management potential. You seem to have a lot of sensitivity to the future of our firm. And you know, we thought maybe you'd like to be in one of our management training programs, and we might train you to do something different than your IT job here. And so he said, wow, of course, I would love to do that. So he went in the management training program, and he said, to make a long story short, I am now that vice president. I've had this enormously successful career, and honestly, I never understood when I was taking your class that this was the most important class I took in college in terms of preparing me to excel in my career. I'm not saying you're all going to have that kind of experience, but I am saying architecture is this incredibly useful tool for you exploring whatever field you're in. It is a mechanism for living in the world in a more sophisticated, more productive way. So the first thing we're trying to do in this class is to expand and familiarize you with the discipline of architecture. Okay, item number 2. So the second thing that we want to do in this class, goal of this class, is to increase your environmental awareness, to just make you more of a gourmet of architecture. So, you know, when we're little kids, you know, all we want to eat is sweet, like sugar pops. It tastes fantastic, and nothing else is interesting. You get a little older, maybe mac and cheese. Oh my God, mac and cheese is everything. I just want to eat mac and cheese. But then hopefully you mature, you begin to get interested in hamburgers, Mexican food, barbecue. Maybe your palate gets a little more sophisticated. You get excited about sushi, tortellini. That's becoming a gourmet in terms of food. And I swear eating is so much more interesting if in fact you expand and grow and learn more, and you can say, whoa, that Christmas cookie has X spice in it. That's what tastes so great here. I love that in German cookies. So the more you know about something, the more you are aware of it, the more you experience it, the more you become a gourmet, and the more interesting and exciting and involving it becomes. So I want to make you an architectural gourmet. Now, I swear there is a kind of resistance somehow in some people to do that. I had 2 parents that were incredibly mismatched. I have no idea how they ever got together. But my mother had been an art major here at UT. My dad had been a business major, but you know, actually he majored in football fandom. Just an amazing football fan. So all the time I'm growing up, my mother loves to go to art museums, but you know, it's like dragging my dad to misery to get him in an art museum. My dad loves to go to football games. And my mother will go, but she kind of resists getting too involved in football games. They're just not interesting to her. The whole time I'm growing up, they've got these incredibly different interests that they couldn't share. But we kids were, you know, into both of those things. And then interestingly, after we all left and all they had at home were each other, suddenly my dad began to open up a little to art. And my mother had started this art collection. She was collecting Barbizon school paintings, this 19th century French paintings. He began to kind of take an interest in that. They'd travel in Europe and he'd go to the art museum. He was beginning to open up. My mother, I could never imagine this would be true, but she would actually watch the football game on TV with my dad because there was no one else to watch the football game with him. And suddenly she began to get more interested and get more excited about it. They were becoming gourmets in each other's field. I can still remember they came up one weekend for a UT football game. And they had been on a trip to Paris and they'd gone to the Jeux de Paume Museum, which is one of my favorite museums anywhere. And my mother and I were talking about this particular painting that we both loved. And my dad said, it's pretty, I get it, but why is that such an outstanding painting? And we just kind of lit on him and explained all the political implications and the advances in painting in general and the influence it had later. And suddenly he's like, whoa, that's exciting. That's cool. Political? Wow, that I never realized. So he was becoming an art gourmet. We went to the football game that night, and my dad, it was freaking encyclopedic. He knew everything about UT football. He read all the magazines, and he's pointing out this, you see the quarterback, he went to the same high school as the end, and he's been passing to him for 5 years already, and actually the quarterback, his dad's a coach, and he's on the sidelines down there. That's him right there. And my mother's like, really? Wow, they went to high school together? It began to be personal, and she's getting excited about it. The more you know, the more you're aware of what you're seeing and what you're looking at, the more interesting it becomes. So we're here in this beautiful courtyard. You can just walk through it and not even be aware at all, or you can walk through it and say, that's a nice place, and forget it. Or you can actually begin to understand, what is it I'm enjoying about this courtyard, and to really increase your environmental awareness. So that's a second goal of the class and what we're trying to do here. A third goal is to make you one step further, to make you an activist, to make you actually care about this field and understand that it's important. It's important in your life, in your neighborhood's life, in your city's life, in the world, and to have you begin to have a point of view and express that. So there are many, many non-architects in the world who are very involved in architecture. Everyone from historically someone like Thomas Jefferson, who was president, but super involved in architecture. Winston Churchill, this great political figure, super involved in architecture. To contemporary people like Steve Jobs, who was all over architecture as a tool for his businesses, both Apple and Pixar. Or Bill Gates, who is a great connoisseur, gourmet of architecture. To Tom Hanks, who's quite an architecture freak. Jonas Salk, the great scientist, tremendous architecture gourmet. So it's a wonderful adjunct for people who are not directly involved in architecture. But as an activist, it means caring about it. It means really investing your own energy in it. So if you're interested, for example, in sustainability and global warming and saving the planet, architecture has a huge role in that. It affects energy consumption. It affects off-gassing and pollution. Architecture has a big impact on resilience, on sustainability. You could be an activist using architecture as a tool for advancing sustainability. If you're interested in something like social equity, architecture has a huge role in social equity. How we make our communities, whether we make them segregated, whether we make them integrated, whether we make rich people's houses adjacent to poor people's houses, or we separate them in completely different communities, how we relate to each other physically, whether we come in contact with each other in our daily lives in a city, this has an enormous impact on social equity. So one could become an activist in architecture, advancing architecture that promoted social equity. So there are many, many different societal and personal interests that can be advanced through architecture. And I want to encourage you to see architecture as a tool and a tool for activism as well. So as a wrap up here, let's think about why architecture might be more appropriate for you to study than many other things you might have taken in this class instead. There are definitely things about architecture that are like other fields in the arts, like music or film or theater or painting or sculpture. All of these are, of course, non-objective fields. They're fields where people have different perspectives and point of view about them. So you may love the singing of Luciano Pavarotti, or you may think that that is horrible, horrible screeching opera. And you're welcome to your point of view on it. It's important to have a point of view. But it's also important to understand that Luciano Pavarotti is an incredibly talented, amazing opera singer, and there's a legitimacy to what's happening there, whether I personally respond to it or not. Same way with Lady Gaga, you can say, oh man, she's amazing, amazing vocalist and musician, and appreciate her enormously. Or you can think, you know, it's ridiculous showmanship, it's all hype. But there's no denying that there is some real talent there, and that it's worth exploring that and understanding that and legitimizing in that way the work of Lady Gaga. So architecture is the same way. I would encourage you to keep an open mind and to understand that this is a non-objective field where you're encouraged to have your own point of view, but also very much to appreciate the value in what we're seeing. Now, it is different, however, from those other fields. You can choose to go to a musical concert or not. You can choose to turn on the radio and listen to that music or not. You can choose to go to a film or never go to a film. You can choose to go to an art museum and see outstanding painting or sculpture, or you can just not make that a part of your life. But honestly, you cannot choose when it comes to architecture. You will, for your whole life, be surrounded by architecture. You will be influenced by architecture, whether you're conscious of it or not. Unlike the other arts disciplines, this is pervasive in your world. It is around you and influencing you and affecting you all of your life. So, from my point of view, it is far more important to understand this discipline of architecture. Now, I myself, I am a complete architecture junkie. I love to travel and visit architecture. I love to photograph architecture. I love to talk about architecture. I love to debate architecture. I love to design architecture. I love to watch it under construction. I love to see people occupying buildings. I've designed and understand how that works. I am a complete architecture junkie. And honestly, I think I've always had the back of my mind that at some point I would just burn out on this, that it wouldn't be interesting to me anymore. But that is not happening. As you can tell, I'm an old guy, and I still am just completely enamored of this field of architecture. I'm a complete architecture junkie. And long ago, I transitioned into not just being a junkie, but being a pusher. And at this point, I am on a mission to make you a junkie and to make as many junkies as I possibly can, because I genuinely feel like this is an important factor in our world. The more we know about it, the more we understand it, the more we demand of architecture, the better we make our world. And that's kind of the bottom line for this class. Okay, see you next time.